We're doing warning, this speech has the word poop in it, so get all your giggles out now. I had to do the same thing to Swan 10 minutes ago. I was like, it says poop. Keep your mature content rating up. But I'm really excited for this one. We're doing a piece from Antony and Cleopatra, and that is it's a really hard play to do because there are 75,000 scenes in it. Like there's like 17 scenes in one of the acts.
Oh
and
my
it's
gosh.
like Rome to Egypt to the ocean, back to Rome, back to Egypt, back to somewhere else. Then there are pirates, then there's this, then there's that. And it's like battle, back in love, battle, we're back in love, battle, we're back in love. So it's like there are just so many different scene changes and so many different tone changes that the play is a roller coaster, and it's beautifully written. It's one of my favorite plays to read. But it's a really hard play to stage, so I don't think it gets done as often as it might be nice to see.
Now, are these more pirates that are heard of and never seen?
No, so this is actually, and this was this speech was inspired by our latest episode of Protest Too Much, because the topic was, if you had to pick a man to rule the world from Shakespeare, who would it be? And my guest brought Sextus Pompey from Antony and Cleopatra, who is an actual pirate and is an actual character in the play. So we actually and I had totally forgotten when we were talking about pirates that exist but we don't ever get to see them on stage. I forgot that he existed, and so I was so excited. I was like, oh my god, this is the one pirate. Our only Shakespeare teases us with pirates all the time, and finally he delivered.
I wonder, you can tell I'm caught up on Protest Too Much and not on Adventure Incorporated, because I was like, I know this one.
I want to see 1606. So I guess it was kind of in the middle-ish. I was curious if Antony and Cleopatra was one of the later plays. If they were like, stop teasing us with pirates and just give us one already.
Give me the pirates.
Give me the pirates. But it's pretty, it's fairly close to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from the end. So it's like the 30th play you wrote. Maybe that's it.
Okay.
And then right after it, he wrote Pericles, which is all about, not pirates, but it's all about like ocean, like shipwrecks and stuff. So maybe he was just in a piratey mood.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing when it comes to Shakespeare. Not that I'm great. Let me rephrase. Aside from Jane Austen, I'm not great with like the body of an artist's work and when it came out. But with Shakespeare, I have zero concept as to like which plays were first, when he was writing them, the different period. Like that one, I don't think we ever really talked about that. We would discuss the specific plays that we were reading in school, but it was never on a timeline.
Yeah. And a lot of that is because we don't really know. We don't have a great like detailed record of when things were written. We know when they were first played, but the writing is kind of a question mark. They've done their best to piece it together, but we don't know.
Interesting.
All right, you ready to hear about Cleopatra?
I'm ready.
So ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. So this is Enobarbus describing how Cleopatra entered into a feast with Antony, like meeting him in a space. And he says, I will tell you, the barge she sat in like a burnished throne burned on the water. The poop was beaten gold, purple the sails, and so perfumed that the winds were lovesick with them. The oars were silver, which to the tune of flutes kept stroke, and made the water which they beat to follow faster, as amorous as their strokes. For her own person, it beggared all description. She did lie in her pavilion, cloth of gold, of tissue, or picturing that Venus where we see that fancy outworked nature. On each side her stood pretty dimpled boys like smiling cupids, with diverse colored fans, whose wind did seem to glow the delicate cheeks which they did cool, and what they undid did. Her gentlewomen like Nereides, so many mermaids tended her in the eyes and made their bends adornings. At the helm a seeming mermaid steers. The silken tackle swell with the touches of those flower-soft hands that yarely framed the office. From the barge, a strange invisible perfume hit the scents of the adjacent wharfs. The city cast her people out upon her, and Antony, enthroned in the marketplace, did sit alone, whistling to the air, which but for vacancy had gone to gaze on Cleopatra too, and made a gap in nature. So that is her grand entrance.
You weren't kidding. Like, that's quite epic.
Yeah. When I said it is extra AF, I meant it is extra AF. I want to pull some of the pieces that I really love visually in this. And I think this is, I was excited to bring this speech to you because, first of all, it's so descriptive. And we've done a lot of character stuff and emotional work, but we haven't done anything that's really like, here is exactly what this looks like. And I think that one of the things that we have to do as directors is say, okay, this is telling me exactly what it looks like. Now, I don't know what theaters you're working for. I do not have the budget to make what it says on this page. We can't do that. Like, we don't have that kind of money. We don't have firework and golden boat money.
We don't even have like cardboard boat money. Let's be real.
Cardboard boat money. And like, part of the thing of this is that it is not ever seen on stage. It is just talked about. So Enobarbus is saying, you have to believe me that this is what she looked like. I'm describing it because even Shakespeare didn't have firework and golden boat money. So it can be, as when we've been talking about the way that we visualize things and the way that kind of that movie director feel of it goes, that you can have all of these moments with a little bit more freedom than you do on the stage. How do you take something that's this that has this much of a detailed description and make it your own, and make it something that feels fresh and feels aligned with the rest of the production that you're putting on? So that was why I was really excited to bring this speech to you, because you always do such a good job of like taking the speech and putting it somewhere that makes sense. So
hopefully I continued with this because I have an idea. I don't know if it makes sense, but
yes. I knew you would. I knew you would have an idea. But yeah, I want to pull out some of my favorite descriptive pieces in here, because there are some that are just so, the times that we're like, damn, Shakespeare was a good writer. So so the poop was beaten gold, purple the sails, and so perfumed that the winds were lovesick with them. The idea that this boat is so glamorous and so beautiful that the winds are lovesick with them. The winds are like, yes, we are going to move this boat because we love it so much. And then that is repeated. That idea is repeated later when it says, and Antony, enthroned in the marketplace, did sit alone, whistling to the air, which but for vacancy had gone to gaze on Cleopatra too, and made a gap in nature. So we see this whole image of Antony like just sitting alone, whistling to the wind, which also left. Wind isn't even there because it has become lovesick with this vessel and has gone to see Cleopatra too. It just is. It really reinforces the natural beauty and the natural power of Cleopatra and a character like that. I also love that it talks a lot about mermaids. I don't know where else Shakespeare talks about mermaids, which might be a good thing for me to look up in a moment. But just the silken tackle swell with the touches of those flower soft hands that yarely frame the office. From the barge, a strange invisible perfume hits the sense of the adjacent wharfs. There's so much power beyond the physical description. Yes, it is gold. Yes, the sails are purple. Yes, the oars are silver. Yes, it's on fire, right? Yes, we have all those physical descriptors, but also the way that this ship is is affecting nature, the natural world around it, I think is so cool. Which cool feels like such a lame such a lame description for what this is and what this is representing. And then of course you have Cleopatra as well, and for her own person it beggared all description. That's it. You know, she did lie in her pavilion, cloth of gold of tissue, over picturing that Venus where we see the fancy outwork nature. That's nothing. There's no description of her. For her own person, it beggared all description. And then it goes on to talk about where she was sitting and her surroundings. So we have this incredible, incredible description of the boat. We have this incredible description of the sails and the oars and the way that the boat affects the wind around it. And then Cleopatra was there, and I can't even possibly describe her. So I think it just Enobarbus is doing a great job of describing all of this glamour, but he won't even try for Cleopatra because her presence is that powerful and it is that just beyond the ability for description. So that's the speech. I like it because it is, we were talking earlier, I almost punked Swan with the I will grind their bones to dust, make them into pies, happy Thanksgiving, Titus Andronicus bit. But I was like, I feel like that's a little gross. I feel like I don't know who's ready for that on a Sunday afternoon. But so we wanted something happy. I feel like this is so grand. And it's such it's just such a glorious description that it felt right for a little celebration on a Sunday.
Yes, I like it.
So, yeah. So, what are your first reactions when you hear something like this?
So it's funny because, like you were saying, this is the first time where they're actually giving very specific visuals, but I think still in, I'm trying to think how I want to say it. Not like that. Like, while he is telling me what I am seeing, at the same time, there's still something kind of open-ended about it. So this is what's being described, but because I'm taking this character who is doing the describing as the storyteller, he could be telling me the complete truth, or he could be like making it even bigger. So I like that idea of, so I'll give you a pitch for this. What I decided to do is pitch it like the Met Gala. So you're having the opening scenes are a like an entertainment type talk show host who is talking about this entrance of Cleopatra. And just like you would get like Lady Gaga, who literally came in as an egg, you have this incredible person who is coming in. So it is a ship, but it's actually just something that these gentlemen are carrying. And when they're talking about the mermaids, I'm going to put all of her like ladies who are around her in mermaid style dresses and this big like beautiful fancy, because it's always the entrance, it's the red carpet entrance that is the excitement that everybody covers. So for like the oars and the shimmering and all of this, it's actually just adornments on this container that they're carrying her in on.
Yeah. So that's really funny because this is when I was thinking of, because I play a game in my head of what will Swan do with this speech? What will where will this play go? And this is kind of the only modern analogy that I could think of was like a red carpet or a Met Gala look, because there's so much room for coming in on an egg. There's there's so much room for going for it.
Celebration of over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it could be the theme for that year, and it completely fits that you would then go all out.
Yeah, so that's really fun. I love that, and I think that it is having the perspective of the news report on it rather than seeing it for ourselves is a great way to tie in that third person description of it. Because yeah, this is what he's describing, and we, as with any narrator, reliable or otherwise, we don't really know if that's what really happened.
Right.
There's a certain amount of trust there.
And I like that, with those highlight shows and when they're talking about, what they wore, whoever is doing the commentating is deciding if what they wore was good or what they wore was bad. Like,
Yeah.
it's a completely subjective thing. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just whoever is remarking on it kind of has that power. So it's an interesting, thing where he's clearly enamored with it as he's describing. So
Right.
it should be beautiful. Whereas, if it was another network or something and they're talking about, how it was so over the top and they had so many people and the mermaid thing is played out and
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And as I'm listening to you, I'm going back and reading through the speech, and so many of these words are tone dependent as well. So if you look, the poop was beaten gold. Like, we have beaten as a term of like painted or made gold, or there was so much gold on it. But if you read it with a tone where it was like beat to heck with gold, like too much, and then you've got purple the sails and so perfumed that the winds were lovesick with them, you could have that kind of saccharine sweet disgusted tone. And then the idea of purple, if you're taking it in terms of like purple prose, like it's just too much. That's a criticism I've gotten in my own writing. Get that purple prose, meaning like I had someone in a writers group once be like, God, I forget what exactly they said, but they were basically like, I couldn't even get through one sentence because it was so purple. And I was like, I mean, yes, it is. You're right. But also, wow.
So that's, again, this is how you know that Emily is not a writer. I've literally never heard that term before. So
yeah, so purple prose is like overly descriptive, like to the point where it's unnecessary. And it's like, I don't know where the phrase comes from. It's probably like, the way I want to think about it is that like, because the sentences are so long and descriptive, it's almost like you run out of breath saying them out loud, so your face turns purple.
Oh, okay.
I don't know any writers in chat want to tell me where that phrase comes from. I don't know, but it is a thing that I know that I am overly descriptive because most of the time I'm writing to get 50,000 words in November. So you lay off my purple prose. But it can, the connotation of purple here could be over the top and bad as well. The oars were silver, which to the tune of flutes kept stroke and made the water which they beat follow faster, as amorous of their strokes. Again, with tone, you could have that, the idea of the mismatch of silver and gold, or them beating the water to make them go faster. Like, you could have negative connotation there. Yeah, this is really fun because I've obviously never read it anyway other than general amazement. And a Barbus just being like, oh my God, it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right that a different channel would be like, there was gold and there was silver and there was purple and there were mermaids, and mermaids were so 2010.
Yep. And I think that's I enjoy it from the outside perspective of, yeah, this is a cool critique on celebrity culture, which I think is over the top and ridiculous no matter who is reporting on it. But just the fact that you could have, one person putting up this woman in a dress and saying, she absolutely killed it and looks amazing, and this other person being like, I can't believe she chose that cut, it's not in. Like, it's just so arbitrary. There's like, doesn't mean anything. None of it means anything. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's all in the eye of the person judging.
Yeah.
And that person judging might just not like the person, and they're going to find something to, there's always, and I think that especially when it's strong people in power, that have become such like sexualized icons, there's going to be more, because like someone like Lady Gaga is going to attract people who want to hate whatever it is she's doing.
Yep. So, she shows up in an egg the one year and they hate that. And then she shows up, years later in this beautiful, like very reserved dress with not much makeup. And they're like, well, clearly she didn't put any effort in. You're like,
right.
Okay.
What can she do right? What can she do to make you like her, you specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really fun way to look at it, especially like a lot of these legendary characters. Like legendary within their own plays.
Which, and again, like, obviously I don't know this play well, which you could say about literally all the ones we've covered, but these are names that I know. Like,
Yes.
know Cleopatra, and even though I couldn't give you specifics on it, I know the weight of this character.
Yes.
And it's always associated with regalness and royalty and grace and beauty, and she's basically Miss America at this point. But like that type of gravitas. So it, even going in before I hear anything of what you've said, I already have that in my brain.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. There are a few more mermaid quotes. Not just this one. He mentions mermaids a few times. I was really curious because like it's such a weird term to reconcile with Shakespeare. Like mermaid just doesn't feel very Shakespearean, even though he's got like lots of fairies and ghosts and all of those things. It just feels so out of place, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. Trying to figure out how I would actually carry this thing.
So in general, when you get a piece with, like when you're drawing anything, whether it's a comic or just regular art, how much description do you like to get versus how much room do you like to have for your own personal expression?
So for me, because my favorite thing is drawing and designing characters, I like if the writer has a specific idea of what they would like the character to look like, I would like them to give me as much as they can so that I am envisioning it the way they are. That's the big thing. I like it if they can give me a good framework for the setting that they live in. But what I really like to have the control over is the layout of the page. So what I would like to be told is, this is the beginning, this is the end, this is what we have to accomplish on this page. But the puzzle and the fun for me is, how do I tell the most interesting story, incorporating the important elements that are happening on this page, but in a beautiful visual way? So that's one of those where, like, you've designed the characters, you've designed the setting, all of that will be there, but now I get to take you on the journey from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. So that's one, like, I've had both ends of the spectrum. I've had an author who gave me, again, the idea of, this is what we're accomplishing on the page, I don't really care how you do it or how many panels. And another person was like, okay, in this panel it's going to show this, in this panel it's going to show this, which is still fine because I still have room to be creative. And I can kind of, that's why we'll usually do a couple of rounds of, here's my roughs, is everything look okay? If there's something they want to change, we change it then. And I can kind of work within those constraints. And I've been lucky. I haven't had anybody who was just like, no, it has to be this layout, which is good because that can be it. I think it would be like me being, you can only use these specific words to describe somebody because that's the only way I can design a character. Like, it doesn't seem fair to hamstring either of us. So, you know, giving me the freedom to have a little bit of play inside of the page and inside of the panel gets you a better story.
Well, yeah, and that kind of coincides with writing as well. Like, there's, if you're being commissioned for something, or if you're writing, like, you as the creator are going to know structure so much better than the person who is, like, if someone is coming to you for this purpose, like to do something that they cannot do, there should be a level of trust, at least in structure and format, that you know what you're doing.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, and
Um,
I think honestly a lot of it comes from, I mean, like friggin' everything, it's practice.
yeah,
So writers who have not worked collaboratively on comics a lot before often feel like they have to explain and do everything because they have this vision of how it looks. And I think as you work through that, then you can be like, especially if you get comfortable working with a specific artist, then you can be like, okay, I know you can do this thing. Here's just what I need to do because we need to get to this point for the next page. And
yeah,
so it kind of becomes a little bit more give and take from there, which is very cool.
yeah. So what about like so you said you want a lot of description for people, a lot of description for what you want people to look like. Do you work off of photo references a lot?
Uh, uh at this point, not anymore, unless the person would say something like, you know, it needs to look like Daniel Craig or something like that. Like I feel
Sure.
like um
Always willing to look up a picture of Daniel Craig.
right? I was like, "Oh no, look up
It's for
pictures."
work.
Yeah, shoot, that's such a bummer. Yeah, I don't as much. I think because, well, I do like drawing um people who look like other people. Um I think my style is cartoony enough that it doesn't always, like, you can't specifically tell like, oh, this was supposed to be this person unless I push a little
Right.
bit further. So it would be weird for me if they came to me, they're like, okay, we need Catherine Zeta-Jones as this person, you know, we need George Clooney as this person, and like I was like, okay, or you just want a handsome gentleman and a handsome woman with black hair, like
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
um
Future Skeleton in chat says hides face in quote, what about DJ Qualls meets Brad Pitt, but the bad parts of each, end quote.
so for those, I did look up photo reference, and I was so happy with what we came up with.
I mean, honestly, you nailed it. I don't I imagine a requests like that are few and far between.
Yes. But that one made sense because it's, and so I love, no, and
No.
no yikes, not bad at all. Because so this is the cool thing. This is where if someone has that specific idea in their head and there aren't easy words to articulate it, show me a picture because
Yeah.
then I'm seeing what you're seeing. And that helps me because you had the specific idea. And even at the end of it, the character still looks like something I drew. It still looks like a cartoon, but we got those elements because that's what you were looking for. So yeah, no, I was not upset with you giving me specifics that I had to look up at all.
Well, and I guess it's not really different than like describing physical features because sometimes like people who aren't artists don't have the words. I wouldn't have any idea how to describe what Mike wanted without using people references like he did,
Yeah,
because I feel like DJ Qualls and Brad Pitt have such distinct features, but I wouldn't know how to be like, okay, you know how on DJ Qualls he has like that face?
exactly.
You know how his face does that thing?
Yeah.
That's what I want.
It can be very hard to distill down the uniqueness of someone into language. And again, that's the whole point of photo reference, is to make it easier. I'm not
Yeah.
going to trace it. I'm just going to use it as the reference it's meant to be. So no, that was that was absolutely fine.
Inspiration.
Inspiration. Yeah.
Well, because I know you also have done a lot of the Patronus portraits,
Mm-hmm.
which are amazing and I love. And I didn't know if something like that for you is less fun than being able to come up with original characters or even like your version of, because you're taking real people and stylizing them in your style. So I basically my whole question is like, how much of control do you like to have as an artist?
So I think, and this is interesting because I've talked to some other artists recently about it, and I think I am more excited and willing to be like the creation tool for someone else's idea. I really enjoy that. So the cool part is, especially with the Patronus portraits, when I'm doing them in person, I get a chance to talk to the person I'm going to be drawing. I get to see their expressions. I get to see how they emote, how they move. And so I'm taking that and turning that into a character. So you did all of the work for me by standing in front of me. And now I get to do the fun part, which is draw you in my style as I see you in my head. So for like character creation, I really like hearing someone talk passionately about their character or describe them or pick the things that stand out to them, because then I can take that and kind of mull it around in my head and make it my own, again, collaborative thing. But I know a lot of artists who are just like, nope, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to work with anyone else. I just have the ideas in my head and I just want to bring that vision to life. And again, there's no wrong way to do it. It's why I take on, more commission work than some of my other friends, because I like that part of it. But yeah, it never feels, when I'm drawing stuff like that, it never feels like I am just a person with a pen who is having someone else like guide my hand and do that. Like I've definitely had, usually in my day jobs, like work where they're like, the text has to be here and the football has to be here and it has to say this word and that's it. I'm like, cool. I feel so artistically fulfilled by this logo. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's got to be the stuff that pays, right?
Yep. Yeah. So that's the stuff I refer to as like point and click design, where it is, especially for sports, because there's, you can't there are so many teams, there's so many high schools, you can't reinvent the wheel every time you need to make a football logo. Yeah. It needs to say the school's name, the word football, and some sort of image that represents football.
A helmet or a football.
Exactly. Like, okay. So there's a reason that clip art and stuff like that exists, because it's a very quick, very readily available, or, the school's logo. Like, this is easy visual representation. But also, given the choice, I would rather illustrate comics than continue to do art like that. And there's nothing wrong with that type of art. And there are artists who are great at it and do it very quickly and very competently. But yeah, I definitely got to the point where I was like, I can no longer do this anymore.
Is a lot.
A lot. Okay. Yep. I have done enough football. I feel content that I have done all that I need to do for football.
You have exhausted your football potential, your limit of football logos.
Yeah. But then, there was one where it was super fun where a coach was coming up. He was getting the chance to, so he was establishing like the soccer program getting goods, so getting warm-ups and stuff like that, and they were designing a specifically soccer patch, because he's like, no, it's a very, and again, I know I'm out of my depth of this, very European football thing to have a patch that has your logo and your team, and that's what represents you. But their school didn't have that, so I got to design that, and it's very specific things that you can and can't do. I still got to come up with something that represented their school, represented their colors, and was something brand new,
unique.
That was super fun. Yeah, and that was cool. So again, there's a reason I was at that job for a while, because I got to do some really fun and different stuff. But yeah, when it comes to comics, the goal at the end of the day for me is I want you to feel like the vision you had in your head is what you're seeing on the page, or, if it goes really well, that it's even better than you imagined. But yeah, I want the author to be happy, because this is it's their baby. It's the thing that's been in their head. And I want to do everything I can to help them see it on the page.
Yeah.
Yes. Soccer crest. Future Skeleton. Soccer crest.
Well, actually, it's called a crest.
He was so upset about that he just missed the straw in his coffee. He just like put his whole mouth on the cup and the straw was going the other way.
Oh my god. I love it. I love it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so that's, I don't know, that's really interesting to me, because it's obviously not something that I have any experience in. But I think it parallels the decisions you have to make as a director, because you have it's all on the page, but then you have established productions that have kind of like set the precedent for certain plays. You have things that have made the plays famous in their own production based way. And so trying to avoid or replicate or whatever, be inspired by, and also pretend you've never seen the the different versions, like how do you do that? I don't know. I don't have an answer.
And I think that's the interest. And for some reason, I don't know why it's this specific example that pops to mind, but I always think of people who take on the role of Elphaba in Wicked. Because, and I don't know if it's just because it's one that I really enjoyed, but in my brain, Idina Menzel is so much like, that's what I saw, that's what I see when I think about it. And she's the voice on the track. Like, how much of that do you listen to going into it? So that, are you just mimicking her, or are you trying to make it your own? Like,
well, so I saw an Instagram video the other day that Les Mis is iconic with the original voices as well, and I think that we forget that actors can make choices. And so I was listening to in I Dreamed a Dream, you've got that whole but there are dreams that cannot be, and this actress goes, but there are dreams that cannot be, and I was like, what and it was beautiful. I do not do it justice, but I don't know, look up the option in I Dreamed a Dream, because it was like you just changed a note and changed the whole thing. And for design as well, not even just for voices or mimicking the way that the original actress or actor sang the songs, but when I followed I mean, I still do, but like when Great Comet was on Broadway and they were closing, one of the, I think it was the lighting designer, was talking about when it eventually opens up for rights, like, do your own stuff. Don't try to mimic what happened on Broadway because that's a production you loved. You can love an original production and recreate it in a way. Like these designers won Tonys for their creativity. You do not have to steal. And I know we've talked about this. I'm pretty sure we've talked about this on episodes before, but like I knew a director who basically cut and paste from the movie. He would cast people who looked like the movies and the set would look like the movies. And then he would take, go to different community theaters across the country and just like build the same set. So you're looking through his photos, and besides the fact that the actors are different people, you're like, was this the one from our theater? You don't know, because it looks exactly the same as the one from the theater in California, or looks exactly the same as the one from wherever else. Like, where's the creativity in that?
Yeah.
If you're asking actors to, and that's even harder in like plays, to make the same vocal choices as another actor, like where is the fun in that? Why are you doing it if it's just going to be a copy and paste?
Yeah.
I don't see the joy. There was a re-up, I think it was in Germany, of Wicked actually, that did like new sets, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's new sets in Wicked." And it's like, yeah, because they had a costume designer and a set designer. And what good is that set designer if they're just like, "Yep, cut and paste from Broadway"? Yeah, I don't know.
And again, I mean, this is takes a weird tangent. One, it's why I think I would love to see more adaptations like they did with Hamilton, where there was a recording of it that you could then either buy or have access to. So you could see it as it was performed, but then knowing that other shows off Broadway, West End, all these other performances might be different because they're bringing their own thing to it. And now here's a reason, other than just enjoyment of the material, here's a reason to go and see it. How do they see Oz? And I get so angry. I'm sorry. A whole tangent thing with Oz.
Yes.
Like, L. Frank Baum had a really weird envisionment of Oz. Yeah. It was strange. And it's not the same as, the source material for Wicked, even. Like,
yeah.
If you're going to get on it being correct, I'm like, I'm sorry, they didn't imagine.
It's a fictional place that doesn't exist.
Like, how can it be wrong? like, again, it's the whole glasses thing where it's like, is it even green or is it just because you wear the glass? This is my hot button thing. I didn't realize I was so feisty about
No, I love it though, because I think it's a problem in theater. I think it's a huge problem that people try to mimic and they try to make the costumes as close to originals as possible. And that is one thing that is great about Shakespeare, is that it lends itself. We don't have a playbook that says exactly what the staging looks like. We don't have photo references of, the original. We don't have costume. We've got costumes that remain, but it's not like this is exactly what everybody in The Tempest wore.
Right.
And as technology improves, we just have so much more room and so much more opportunity to make these things our own and to put them on stage in a really unique, fun, interesting way. And also, it's hard to not be like, I really loved what this production did.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because there's been times where, I've never seen Wicked on Broadway. I've watched it a couple of times off Broadway, and between the two shows, I was like, oh man, I really like what this one person did. But, the dance choreography in this one was better. Like, what they did in Dancing Through Life was better.
Yeah. And it can be. Like, that's the thing, is that Broadway, one cookie cutter Broadway production is not the only thing that can be good. And a lot of people would disagree with me on that. But it's true. You don't have to just try to be Broadway, because a lot of times, especially when we're working in community theater, like, there are incredible voices and incredible actors, but the reality is that your budget, your constraints of actors who have regular jobs that take tolls on them, that is going to impact the quality of your performance in a way that, like, if people come in expecting cookie cutter Broadway, they're never going to get it.
Yeah.
But there's so much more. I think that there's so much creativity in community theaters to make their productions incredible using the resources that they have. And that should be, there's a stigma on community theater because it's a hobby, like, people don't get paid and they don't have money for crazy things, but like, that doesn't mean, like, these are the most resourceful people like ever.
Yeah.
And I think that there should be so much more community support and less like theater pettiness looking down on them. Yeah. Raging Lady Boner. There was a community theater here recently that did Legally Blonde and cast a Black woman as Elle, and it was amazing. I saw the videos on your Instagram, and holy bananas.
That's so great.
It looked incredible. The voices in that show, I was listening and I was like, this is not community theater. Like, holy shit. This is a touring production at the least. And those are the gems that you'll find. And like, that stigma against community theater that it can't possibly be that good is just like, I'm guilty of it too, right? I just said it. But yeah, that show looked incredible. And her only descriptor is that she's blonde.
Yeah.
That's it. Takes me out of the game, y'all. Can't even.
And then there's wigs. There's wigs. That's a beautiful thing. You don't think you could? I mean, it's a lot of work being blonde. It is.
No, there is no. You can't even put a blonde wig. I would look like green. I would be. You might as well cast me as Elphaba at that point, because if you put anything yellow or blonde next to my face, I just look green. Like, I look sick and ill and disgusting. I always joke that if I ever get to do like a miscast cabaret, that I'm gonna sing from Legally Blonde.
Yes. Also, that soundtrack is such a banger.
Oh god, it's so good.
It's so good.
I used to say it was my guilty pleasure, and then I just started dropping the guilty because I don't feel guilty about it at all. It's great.
Yeah.
I have no guilt, no shame in loving that musical because it is so good.
And I think it made some changes from the movie that I really, really like. And just, yeah, I was happy that Emmett gets to be more of a character. Although we'll talk about like not being able to break myself out of it. He will always be Luke Wilson in my head just because.
Yeah, but then it's Christian Borle on Broadway.
I know. I have tormented by that character.
My favorite Christian Borle story, speaking of Shakespeare, is when I saw Something Rotten on Broadway. And he was playing Shakespeare, and I had him. I've got like a wallet that's like a cover of like Romeo and Juliet. So it's like, it looks like a book and it's shaped like a book and it's big and heavy and everyone thinks I bring a book to parties. And I'm like, no, I promise. The book's inside.
Please.
And I had him sign it. And he was like, I feel like such a fraud. Like, I feel like this is not appropriate for me to be signing Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, I love that.
The best. And you have great biceps.
You are lovely inside.
You
and
are
out.
lovely, Meteora. All right, how is this happening? Is this our fashion host?
Yes. I'm trying not to just straight up steal Stanley Tucci from the Hunger Games.
Oh, I was looking at the hair and I was wondering.
Yeah, I wanted big hair. He felt like he needed big hair. Like this is straight up Entertainment Tonight. Like this is he's big. He's also, I guess I'm more channeling, I think, Graham Norton's enthusiasm. Like I just want him to be gah over the whole thing where he's just like, can you believe it? And just he's having a moment with this and
Having a moment.
I love it.
OMG across the TV screen.
Yeah, because I imagine him like very much like the Soup or stuff like that, where he's just standing on a green screen and all of the stuff is getting projected up behind him, so he's just interacting with that. But
that's awesome. This is really fun, and I'm excited that it's getting like a modern spin to it.
Because it was a tricky thing, because I was like, man, when you were telling me it was grand, I was like, oh, how do we do that? I guess the other one, again, this is why you get the first idea that pops to my head. The only other thing I could think of was very much like Marie Antoinette time, where you'd have those very iconic, very classic, because that's a fashionable thing. Like she was a fashion trendsetter. So that's about the only other time I feel like where you could get away with that ornate, elaborate, not the only time, but another time that would work.
Yeah, that's true too. Also the hair. I bet that would be fun to draw.
Yeah.
But there are very few places you can get away with, a modern instance of coming in on like a boat or whatever.
Yep.
And it's hard because Cleopatra is a character that, like Anna Barbas says, beggars all description. Like you just, as someone who literally existed as a person and has survived in like as an icon and as a legend for thousands of years, how do you put that on paper? How do you keep putting that on paper? And how do you put, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say even. Like, how do you respect someone like that in your art while still making it your own?
So at least for me, I would say it comes to what is the purpose of the art that I'm creating? So if I had been hired to bring to life a comic book that actually gave factual information about Cleopatra, it might still be historical fiction, but the goal being this is rooted in this real person, this real thing. It would mean that I would do as much research as I could to try and make sure that she visually was historically accurate. Facial features looked the same, or how they should have for someone who lived in the place that she lived, that the costuming was accurate to the time period of what people were wearing, especially, well-to-do people and that type of stuff. If it's something like this, where it's already heightened and exaggerated, I take that as a complete, we're using commonly understood language because it catches the audience up to a certain place so that we're on the same page. You're like, okay, you said Cleopatra, got it. I have a rough idea of what's happening. And then that's it. And then the new story is taking place, so it's the Cleopatra in space or something like that, where you're just like, okay, you're evoking what the general understanding of the zeitgeist of this person is, but that's where it ends. So it would be, for me, I'd like to know, what's the purpose? What are we trying to convey? Are we trying to tell a cool story? Are we trying to be accurate? Are we a mixing of both? To try and make sure that the art matches the intent.
Yeah. Well, and that's a huge thing with Shakespeare in general, that because Shakespeare did a lot of plays about a lot of people who were actually people. And I feel like a lot of my English history comes from Shakespeare plays, and a lot of Shakespeare plays aren't necessarily historically accurate. But they are very dramatic and way more fun than probably what happened. But you look at someone like Cleopatra, and I think my favorite thing about this play, and it's something that it doesn't really address the big things she does besides dying. Spoiler alert. It really,
you get me every time.
It obviously, the circumstances surrounding her and Mark Antony's deaths in fiction, in real history, like there's a lot of nuance and a lot of unknown there for actual history. But the thing that I love about Antony and Cleopatra as a play is that nothing that really happens in this play is something that would have been written down in a history book. It's a lot of just people being people. It's a pretty unhealthy relationship between Antony and Cleopatra. There are no real love scenes between them. We get a lot of anger at each other, and then apologizing for that anger. It's a huge roller coaster of emotional manipulation on either side, really.
Okay.
And then we see when they're apart, we see how much they want to be together. And then you see, so you've got this whole scene with Cleopatra, who is just waiting for any news of Antony. And the news that she gets is that he's been married to Caesar's sister, to make those peace connections. And you see her react to that. And you see like all of the little things that it's not about, like, yes, in history, did Mark Antony marry Octavia Caesar? I mean, I don't actually know, but I assume probably. That's not important. That's not the important part. It's the way that Mark Antony responds to it. It's the way that Cleopatra responds to it. That's the important part for the play. There's so much political stuff happening in the play. There's so much war stuff happening in the play. There's so much. The world is so big around them, and still the play focuses on the two of them as human beings. And that's what I really, really love about it, because that's all going to be fiction no matter what, because we don't know these conversations these people had. We don't know how they reacted to things. We don't know what they were like when they were alone or, unobserved. But we get the glimpse into a possibility of how they may have been. And there's just such a human, for such legendary characters, there's such a human element to it, and such a raw emotional resonance between them.
Yeah.
So I really like.
I love that, because at the end of the day, I think it certainly, for me as a consumer of media, that is what I connect with, that human experience. And the facts and the political happenings of the time period are interesting, and it doesn't discount them. The beauty of the story comes from the humans. And I think, I always think of, when you're talking about royalty of any sort, that it's going to be incredibly rare that you're going to get to know what happens in their private moments. I always think of the anytime a queen is having a kid up until a certain point, like there's a whole bunch of people there watching. Like, how do you have a genuine human moment when you're on display, or when all of your servants are sworn to secrecy? Like, it's such a weird thing. So to have the imagination to say this is what it might have been like between these two people who were real humans and had real human feelings, that's fascinating to me, because that's an unknowable.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because I'm working with my kids right now. We just read Haji Marat, which is Tolstoy. It's Russian lit. It's about the Caucasian War. And Haji Marat was, this huge war hero who switched sides and went back and forth, and, all of that stuff that isn't important. And a lot of the kids hated it. They hated the book. They were like, nothing happened. So we got to have a really good conversation about what that means. Like, first of all, what are your expectations of, like, when you're reading a book, why do you need so many things to happen? Why do you need things to happen in order to feel like you've read something productive? Or the difference between focusing on character and focusing on plot. And I had them do projects on historical people and like just people who have changed the world in some way. And a group chose Princess Diana. And they were all like, nothing happened in the book. He didn't do anything. Like, we didn't even see any battles, or we didn't see, we just heard about whatever, this and that. Like, he switched sides and then he just died. and I was like, okay, what did Princess Diana do? You did this whole presentation about who she was as a person, and the humanity because they focused on when she visited hospitals with AIDS patients, and the humanity that she brought to the AIDS crisis. And I was like, what did she do? Tell me what she did. She went to a hospital and held someone's hand. If you read a book and that was the only action, would you say nothing happened? Probably. Because nothing, it is not anything.
Right.
But it's about intention and how she's remembered. The way I said it was, what did she do in her life besides die famously? Because that was all they could talk about with Haji Marat. And they didn't have an answer for it, because it's just about who she was as a person and how she interacted with the world and the people around her. And that is sometimes as important, if not more important, than people who do big things. So it's kind of a cool way to talk about character focused books and texts,
and reframing of what makes a person notable. Again, it's exactly like, did she contribute anything medically to that situation? No. But again, you take a moment, you step back and say, at that time, there was such a stigma around interacting with people who had HIV or AIDS. And you're taking the privilege of a beautiful white woman who has an audience and is using it to try and destigmatize this very heavy political thing. So again, was that her whole plan? Was that a purpose? Or was it just a statement she was making? Doesn't matter, because what happened and when you pull back and look at it on it, that it had greater impact outside of that.
Yeah, the impact rather than the action itself. Because the action itself, if you write that down, description, okay,
right,
cool story, bro.
Yeah.
Went to a hospital, but it was so much more than that. And you never know if those kinds of talks are just interesting to you, or if they are interesting also to the people in your classroom. But I don't care, whatever. I had an interesting time talking about it.
I have to believe, as someone who is sometimes too nervous to say stuff in class, but really enjoyed talks like that, I am positive there were kids who were totally vibing on it, whether they were showing it or not.
Yeah, and I know that some of them, I had one kid talking about how, knowing that Tolstoy was a pacifist and writing the book about a war without actually talking about any of the real war things, is just a statement on the futility of war and all that jazz. And I was like, yes. Hey. You get 100 today. But that also is important. Like, none of the characters matter. Nobody matters. War doesn't matter, or war doesn't care if you matter. War is going to take whatever it wants
Yes.
anyway. So yeah, there's just so much more to these historical stories, because that's the same thing. Haji Murat is historical fiction. It is about a real person who we don't really know anything about. Tolstoy didn't really know anything about, but he wrote this book anyway.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, and I didn't read that one, so I can't speak to that part, but a book that I really loved in the historical fiction category related to a war was The Killer Angels. And so this is discussing all of these different, let's say, characters, but all real humans who existed and how they are interacting during the Civil War, and what it's like to be a Union soldier, what it's like to be a Confederate soldier. And well, of course, we do have letters and information saved from that. You don't know what they were thinking. You can't know that. Even if they wrote it in their journal or their diary, you can't know. But it was such a, for someone who has, much to my family's, all the male members of my family's sadness, like, I don't care about the battles. Like, do I think that like military strategy is kind of cool? Yeah, I think it's kind of cool for about 20 minutes, and then I don't care anymore. And going to the battlefield and standing there and being like,
ooh, do you have a lot of like reenactors or like reenactor enthusiasts in your fam?
Yeah. So I'm like, but talk to me about, how conflicted was Lee? What was he going through? What was Burnside experiencing during this? Now I'm interested, because now it's a person. Now it's a human. Yeah. And it's not just these huge masses moving and calculating. It's, the fear of riding alone in the woods at night, not knowing if there are spies in the woods. Like, that's interesting. So yeah,
it's funny because you're like, oh yeah, like going to the battlefields, and I'm like, oh, hard pass. But then I'm like, ooh, I would go to Plymouth Plantation tomorrow and hang out there, like those historical just villages. Let me just like exist in a historical village for 10 minutes, and I'm so excited.
If Austen land was a real thing and I could go and be in Regency Austen land, then
Jane Austen. I was like, Swan.
Austin is real.
Place. It's where I live. It exists. It is, I promise. Am I in the Matrix? Yes, if Jane Austen world, the amusement, what an idea. I know that Ren fairs exist, and that's kind of like the medieval Elizabethan area, but like, to do something like that in the Regency period, just like rent out a mansion and make it an event, and you wear your Regency garb, like do all the things that Ren fairs do, but oh my god.
Yeah. So if you haven't already seen it, there is literally a movie called Austen Land that kind of tackles this thing. Oops. So good. It's so good.
Well, then why doesn't it exist in real life yet?
I don't know.
This is our chance, Swan. This is our chance to be millionaires.
I like it. I'm on board.
Sorry, guys. I have to go. I have to buy a mansion. And Jane Austen's World. That's a blog. Let's see. Let's do a Regency Ren Fair. How about that? Okay, it exists. Oh, that's a cosplay DIY. No. I don't think it exists, Swan.
So we might have stuff to talk about over the holiday break, is what you're telling me.
Honestly, I will say I will have to read at least one Jane Austen book. Wait, did Jane Austen write Persuasion?
Yes, she did.
I've read one Jane Austen book.
So you're good. You've got it.
Austen-con.
Which, can we try and get it in Austin? Austen-con in Austin.
Oh, wait, it exists. That exists. Right, it wouldn't be a Ren fair. Right, no, I know. Yeah, I know. It would, yes. Osfair doesn't have the Carrot Productions. I don't like you. I'm allergic to carrots. 6th of November, 2021. We just missed it. 4th annual Austen-con. What? Okay. We're going next year, including an escape room.
Oh, good.
Okay. Normally an Australia-based live event. It was
Always
online.
wanted to go to Australia.
Yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to make it in what's the biggest Austin style house in the US. This is thank you all for tuning in to Sketching Shakespeare. We are talking about neither sketching nor Shakespeare right now, but it is really important. It's really important. It's really important content right here. I don't like that house. That's not enough. Yeah, we're gonna have to we can table this. But I do think it would be fun to do. We even if like it was like a track. Is there an Austin track at DragonCon?
It's part of the Brit track.
Oh, Brit track. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Also, I'm having an idea of something that I think would be funny, maybe for our April episode, where I bring you a piece of Jane Austen and you draw something based on it, and we'll mix it up.
Do you say April because it's like April Fools? Because like surprise to all our listeners, I can't draw. It's gonna look like a little ghost.
That we don't draw the same way. I didn't say we don't draw. We just don't draw the same way.
Honestly, I think that would be very fun. As long as everyone is ready for whatever comes out of my hand, then that would be a really good time.
This is glorious things that are happening here right now.
For real.
He is so beside himself.
He's so excited.
I
love his little eyebrows.
I just wanted him to be like a silly character that doesn't really fit anything else that's happening on the page, but just because he's just so over the top. And once again, this is what I love about getting these as snippets and not knowing the character outside of this one specific moment that I'm seeing them in. I think of the one that we did for DragonCon, like the person who it's actually a really light scene because he's being joking because the whole rest of it is being really heavy. And, you know, how I decided to take that is very, very different. But
yeah.
But I don't know if this guy is actually, you know, as energetic or emotive as I have designed him, but
Enobarbus is a character that y'all, when you are thinking about auditioning for Shakespeare, and you show up to an audition for something like Antony and Cleopatra, the roles you're probably auditioning for are like, I don't know, Antony and or Cleopatra. But there are so many roles in the canon that are so much better than people give them credit for. Enobarbus, I imagine if you say it as a Shakespeare character today, people are going to be like, I don't know what play that's from. I don't know who that is. I don't know anything about them, but he's such a good, complex character. He is one of the best roles in the canon and has some of the best speeches of anyone. I mean, he is Antony's like right-hand man, and then he like leaves Antony, and then he feels so guilty about abandoning Antony that he kills himself. And there's this really like beautiful, painful speech that he has at the end, and it is like it rivals any of the best tragic characters in the rest of the plays, and nobody knows who Enobarbus is. Nobody knows. And I'm just like, everyone should know Enobarbus.
I like it.
Yep. Now, Raging Lady Boner, Darcy and Bingley are words that I've heard before. I know one of them is Colin Firth, right?
Exactly. Yep.
I'm gonna draw Colin Firth as a ghost. I love Colin Firth.
I love him so much. Did you see the King's speech
No, I
Okay.
know that I should.
I
And
think he
know that
does an
it's
incredible job with it.
Shakespeare-based.
For some weird reason, that period of English royalty history is really fascinating to me. Not to learn the facts about it, but to watch tons and tons of information about the royal family just from that specific chunk of time. I don't know why. That's just one of those things. But the person that he is embodying, he does a beautiful job. And whether that's true to how the real human was or not, it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, kind of as we talk about historical fiction in general here today.
Yes. But I
This
love
has
it because
become sketching Shakespeare and chatting historical fiction.
The woman who plays Geoffrey Rush's wife in it is Jennifer Eel, and she was the original Elizabeth Bennet who played opposite Colin Firth in the Pride and Prejudice that I love.
Got it.
Yeah. So I got really excited. I was like, wait, I know her.
I know her. We could do like trivia nights, like where you watch the different edition, like the different versions back to back to back, and then like they battle. I don't know why everything has to be a competition for me, but
I'm here for it. Also,
do.
don't threaten me with a good time because I'll do it.
Like you have one night for Pride and Prejudice, and then like another night for, I don't know, another book that she wrote.
Sense and Sensibility.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. Well, I'm trying to think of ones where I have watched multiple versions of them.
Yeah, there's no shame in that, Swan.
God.
I literally wrote an essay on 15 different Hamlets, so like there's no shame in this.
There are two. I'm sure there are more. There are two movie versions of Persuasion, which it might be my favorite. I'm hesitant to say that because I love them all. There are definitely some where I'm just like, I don't love that one as much, but that one I really, really love. But literally between the two movies, I cannot pick a favorite between because I like things that the one did better, but the other actors are more true to how the characters really would have been, and just yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, I really love Persuasion. It's the letter at the end of the book. Like I've said definitely before, every time I'm in a bookstore, I just like have to reread it because it's just all right. The Swan House in Atlanta looks perfect.
Ooh.
I'm sure there would be too many. It couldn't be like a rowdy con like Dragon Con, even though like, there's too much important things in here.
I mean, there are some lecherous men. There are some cads. There are some. Yeah,
I just meant because of insurance.
I'm trying to think of like what would cause a ruckus if they were being cosplayed. There's some
alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol.
I was just thinking general liability for all of the expensive looking things in any type of this house that you're going to be looking at.
Also, how fitting of a name.
Right?
Yeah.
It feels like it's fate.
It does. No, so Raging Lady Boner, complete confession. I have only watched the 2005 version once, and I was real spicy about it, and I have not gone back, and I need to give it another chance. I need to. I'm gonna try. I struggle with that one.
Oh, it's the Keira Knightley one?
Yep. And it's nothing against her. I enjoy her very much. I think she's an incredibly talented actress.
I have weird feelings about Keira Knightley. I don't dislike her. I have strong feelings. Alan Cumming is in it. It's my favorite movie.
Yeah, I know, because I love him.
Ooh, I like Carey Mulligan as well.
So maybe that's one. Maybe Steph and I watch the 2005, and I also, again, it's only like 2 hours long, maybe less. Where the other one is like a 3 hour. It was a mini series. It wasn't just a movie. It was a mini series, but I will watch it like a movie. And it's like fair. It's over 3 hours long, and I don't care.
I'm gonna read the book. I promise y'all. I'm gonna read it. It's time. Maybe I'll bring it on the plane.
I think there's something interesting too. Again, I'm just spiraling down a weird brain bit here. I really love, critiques of Austen that happen in other movies and shows, like the Jane Austen book club movie, much more enjoyable than the book itself, but I love some of the things that they say in that. I also always think of the scene in You've Got Mail where when they're still emailing back and forth and they haven't met or spent a lot of time together, and she's just like, I read Pride and Prejudice every year, I get lost in the language and this, and you're watching Tom Hanks like try to read this book and not succeed, and it's just like, it's little stuff, and I just love it so much.
That feels so Shakespearean though, because that is like, that kind of interaction is, I saw a tweet the other day, I'm gonna find it because it's too good to summarize poorly, because Mike was not a Shakespeare fan, but I don't think the level of casual Shakespeare reading was quite there, but beep boop beep. Two things simultaneously true. One, there's nothing better than expertise, deep decades-long specialist knowledge of a field. Two, there's nothing better than when someone comes in from outside a discipline, doesn't care about its traditions and commitments, and knocks it off its axis. And that to me like summed up our relationship with Shakespeare so well, because like this is something that I have studied and put a lot of time of my life into, and something that he has not. And yet when he talks about Shakespeare, I'm like, shit. Well, shoot. Oh, okay. Because there's so much freshness and perspective that I could never dream of having, because when you're in something so deep, you can lose a lot of the kind of fresh air. It's like you've dug yourself into this hole of academic study, and you lose the real world around you, the modern world around you. And he has that fresh perspective, and he's so I think improv-y feels like an insult, but I mean it as a compliment, because he's always looking for ways to see things differently, and he's always looking for like honest, real reactions to things, because that's how he is rooted as an improviser. And to have that perspective on Shakespeare is just so invaluable. Like I could not, there's so much of Shakespeare that I've done in the past 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 4 years, I don't know, past honestly 15 years since I've known him, that I've done differently because of his fresh perspective. And I think that's a cool way to get to interact with something that you love. And a lot of people see it as, if you haven't spent excessive time with this thing, you don't deserve to have opinions on it. And I'm like, oh boy. We're not getting anywhere with that.
Yeah, you just summed up a lot of the issues with the adaptation of Comic-Cons and fandom and geekdom in a beautiful way. It's like, no, we benefit from new voices, from new perspectives, and none of it diminishes how Batman has been written for the last 75 years. But a new take on this, a new look, a new spin, or new characters, it's not a bad thing. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it current. Yeah.
Yeah. And excuse me, I imagine with art too, I wonder if there's a do you see a lot of like gatekeeping in terms of people who've been educated, quote unquote, in art, versus people who are quote unquote untrained? Because I feel like art, like, I don't know, I feel like any type of theater or art training, like you got to take with a grain of salt. Like it's important to have foundations, and classes are probably incredible, but like also you don't need a degree to be talented in something.
Yes. Yes to all of that. And it's appropriate because we just had a kind of a close conversation to this on one of the recent Doodle Crews where we were working in watercolor. And Laura is a classically trained artist, and she has a fine art background. And so she's a part of, we'll say, fine art discussion circles. And the idea in that is that there's a right way to do watercolor and there's a wrong way to do watercolor. In my personal opinion, do I think that's true? No. I think you can create art however you want to. And we get into the, how do you classify it? You know, if you want to say, if you're submitting to a contest, because also in my brain, everything's a competition, then you can only use water-based paints that are watercolors. Okay. So does that mean I can't use like a watercolor pencil? Because it's still the same. If I break the color out of that and draw with it, am I breaking the rules of the thing? Blah, 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 whatever. But I think they are afraid to let anybody in to play in their playground, and then somehow it becomes less elite. Whereas I think it's a strange thing because this is going to sound really weird. I don't mean it in a mean way, but in my personal opinion, the thing that separates artists is talent in certain ways. Much like, we'll say, Broadway singers. I will never sing on Broadway because I do not possess the skill to sing on Broadway. Do I still enjoy singing? Could I still perform in theater if I wanted to? Yeah. So am I less of an artist because I don't have the accolades? Like, that's a weird thing. So for me, it always comes down to passion, and you're always going to have parts of the media that you're in raised up, celebrated, and marked as the best of the best in that. You know, there's a reason that there are Grammys and Emmys and Tonys and all of these things, and you can appreciate people being truly excellent in their field.
Yeah.
I don't think that means that the other people who work in the field aren't deserving or aren't able to call themselves artists.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I had a guest on my podcast who I was like, you know, because normally I do like a actor, director, or whatever. And he's like, yeah, you know, I've written some play adaptations, and I run a little theater company. And I was like, oh, great. So like actor, writer, director. He's like, oh, just hairdresser is fine because that's what I do. And I was like, you're allowed. He's like, I don't know if I feel comfortable like calling myself a writer because I've never had anything published. And I was like, flipping the table. I was like, you're a writer. If you have acted, you're an actor. And yet, of course, I find myself doing that all the time for myself. Like, qualifying successes is something that I'm actively working on trying not to do. I can be proud of the things that I've done instead of like trying to qualify. You know, I climbed a hard problem in the gym, and my first reaction was, oh, it was an easy one for that color. And I was like, no, bad. Don't do that. Be proud of yourself for the thing that you did, and you're allowed to, you know, celebrate things that you've done without qualification. And I think it's something that we need to remind ourselves, especially in creative fields, a lot more than we tend to, and letting ourselves own those titles without qualification, while still respecting the immense talent that gets people on some of those pedestals. I think it's a slippery slope to always be comparing yourself, and it's important to recognize talent where talent exists.
Absolutely. And I think, again, I am going to speak about myself differently here between the two of us in a casual conversation when I talk about myself being an artist. I consider myself an artist top to bottom. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to apply to a job interview, you know, to work for an animation studio, then it is important for them to know the art that I've done in the past, the accolades that I have made. You know, if I was a part of a team that animated an award-winning short, it gives them information about what I can do, and can I be reliable? Do I have the knowledge base and the skill set to play at the level they're playing? So it's a different conversation. I'd still refer to myself as an artist, but with something like that, I said, you know, for comics, I've been a part of a nominated piece of art, but I've never won an award for my comic art.
Yeah, but a lot of people have never been nominated.
So, you know, it's a weird thing. So for me, it's always what is my goal with the language that I'm using to talk about it. When I talk to my students, I say, you know, I'm an artist. I do art. I create art. I love to draw. I love to paint. I love to do these things. That makes me an artist. For my career, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a sequential illustrator, I'm an instructor.
Yeah.
You know, these are different labels that make sense to people to understand what it is that I can do and offer goods and services to them. So yeah, it's so many thoughts on this whole thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, me too. And it's always, I feel like it's a lot easier to talk about it in terms of other people than ourselves sometimes. Because like I struggle with that. I don't have a PhD, so I don't feel like I can call myself an academic. I don't, do I like calling myself an actor or a director? I struggle with because I do neither of them frequently enough or like consistently enough, even though I have done both. I am a podcaster, and then I like what determines success in that field. So it's like I'm always second guessing. The only thing I know that I am is an educator. Thank you, Harold.
Yeah.
Thank you for your support. And it's like the thing I don't want to be, right? Like the thing that also makes me the most exhausted every single day. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to be kind to yourself with those types of labels and let yourself own them. And I think it's important to say to other people as much as we can so that we remember to do it for ourselves too. Can you talk me through what you're doing?
So I like to jump again. I like to jump around a little bit. Also, part of this is what can I get done in this time? And I'm going back and forth on these two panels here because they are redundant and I'm trying to figure out what is a better use of what I'm doing. But for this part,
I meant with the the window dripping condensation.
I like the idea. So what I want to show, let me go back here. So I want to, instead of having straight up sails, I wanted to have kind of like curtain. And I always imagine her having coverage that is sheer. So something that is obstructing the view, but is sparkly and see-through. So you're getting that effect of I can kind of see your outline, but everything's just a little obscured. So it builds the mystery. It's also why like her mermaid people are going to have veils on so you don't see their faces. So I just like this idea of while it is a news report and he is talking and he is commentating on all of this, for these middle panels here, you're getting actual up close details of what the barge looked like, what the people look like. And then I just wanted this moment of what the audience kind of maybe wouldn't have seen, but the up close cameras would have seen, of just this brief moment where there's enough light where you can kind of see her and you get Antony's reaction to it. And then the next jump is, the host then talking about like, oh my gosh. And then the way they looked at each other. Like,
I love it. I love his little face. And I don't know, there is something about his eyebrows that I cannot get over. Maybe his eyes too. Like, I don't know what it is. There's something about like the simplicity in like just the one line eyebrow instead of like, making them, I don't know, like there's just the little scoop of eyebrow is absolutely killing me on this guy. And I love it so much.
And this, again, it's the thing that I think is funny to play with on, when you have someone who is so strikingly beautiful that it doesn't make sense. Like there's not a lot of places to go with that. Like they're just beautiful. And while that is fun to draw, that's not the most exciting thing. So then having this kind of comic relief in there where he just gets to be all expression and it doesn't really matter what he looks like that's a fun play. And I think that's why you have a comic sidekick to, the two main characters. Like they are kind of the stand there and be beautiful, but you're not as much personality. So then you have their aides and their stewards who are the big personality because these two are kind of okay. Yep, they came in and they were beautiful again. But hey, I'm going to sing you a song about how pretty they are and you're going to laugh. Like, yeah, I like playing with that.
Yeah. No, that's really fun. And that's a good way to put it too for a comic sidekick. Because so many of those roles are so much more interesting and more fun than the traditional leads.
So for my very, very limited, again, it's not stage acting, it is dance, but for the senior show that we did and then came back and revisited the same show in my years at the dance studio, one of the story ballets that we put on was Camelot. And it's a beautiful story. I mean, it's got some of the songs make me laugh because I'm a child and I have no maturity, and it's literally the lusty month of May, and I'm just like, but like, there's interest there in Guinevere and Lancelot and all of that and Arthur, but there's a couple of moments where like theirs is the heaviness and theirs is the gravitas. So when it comes to the dance translation, those are the ones where there were really beautiful ballet. That's straight up the gorgeous Swan Lake traditional ballet. And the role that I played in those was the jester. So when I came out on stage, I did cartwheels. I did, all of my songs were much more like jigs and jumping around. And one of the scenes was me pushing, Arthur into Guinevere. Like, and then they have this gorgeous partnering ballet that they do. But like, my part in that was not the gorgeous ballet, but I had so much fun because I got to run around and be crazy and do what worked for me. And not that I can't do ballet, but I'm not the traditional gorgeous ballet dancer, and the girl who played Guinevere absolutely was. So it fit like, no, you want to watch her do this, but you also kind of want to watch me be very silly.
I want to watch you be very silly. That's what I want. I also want to watch you do ballet. So there you go. But yeah, I think that there's especially in Shakespeare, and I think musicals as well, but I think people accept it more in musicals because I think people have a slightly more realistic attitude towards the voice type they have. Maybe not the voice they have, but the voice type that they have. Like, I think people recognize in themselves, and we see so much that leads are typically sopranos and tenors, and the sidekicks are typically the altos and the baritones. Well, I don't know. I think there are a lot of baritone. I don't really know for men. I don't care about men. I only care about me. And I know that the leads are sopranos and the secondary characters are altos, and I think that people accept that in themselves. But in something like Shakespeare or plays where type is so much freer, I think people want so desperately to be those title characters because they're the characters people have heard of. And I think it's a lot easier to say, oh yeah, I'm playing Hamlet in Hamlet than I'm playing Fortinbras in Hamlet. Come see me. Because people are like, oh, who's that? And it diminishes so many of the incredible roles that are in Shakespeare because there are so many. I mean, there's a soothsayer in Julius Caesar that's on stage for like 30 seconds. And if you have the right actor who's willing to embrace it, those are the roles that people remember and that people, will run away from. It, it doesn't help that it was, my aunt has a really strong Boston accent that she cannot hide. So Beware the Ides of March becomes Beware the Ides of March. And it like is the most amazing thing that's ever happened on stage.
Oh God, I love it so much.
But like, regardless of that, she embraced that character and took it to a place where it was unique and different and not just a throwaway part. Because yes, that is one of the most iconic lines in Shakespeare, Beware the Ides of March. We all know it, I imagine. Or at least you've heard it in passing. And so, but nobody's like, ooh, I want to play the soothsayer.
Right.
They're not like, what's your dream Shakespeare role? It's going to be the soothsayer for me. Nobody does that, but there's so much. It just our focus on title characters really diminishes the room for play and for originality and creativity, like you were saying, and if the jester doesn't push Guinevere and Arthur together, they don't get together, right? Like there's
what's the whole point of them being in the woods and setting up this scene? Like again, it's
so we need those characters, and there's also so much more. You've got so much more precedence on how the title characters are portrayed because people focus on them more naturally. So there's a lot more room for like originality and defying audience expectations, because when the audience doesn't have any expectations for the soothsayer, you've got so much more freedom. Old ladies in the audience are going to be judging whoever gets to say to be or not to be. They're going to be judging it, and you're always going to have someone who's sitting there thinking, I could do better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that is hard about Shakespeare. You've always got someone in the audience and sometimes that person is me. Sometimes I'm that person. I'm watching a show and I'm like, I could have directed this better. But I'm also a petty bitch. So there we are.
What I was going to say, though, is I would so much rather work for a director, like I think you would be, with the excitement on all of these other characters, and in that no way diminishing the heaviness of the leads, but everybody who's on stage is contributing to this and makes it better, and you're excited for these other parts. And sometimes, I don't know if it's just because we both work with kids, but sometimes that's all it takes, because you can only have one Romeo and one Juliet. Yeah. But there's a lot of people in that play who do a lot of fun and cool and crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I there's nothing else to say. It's if you don't have, as a director, if you don't have as much vision for your ensemble and small line count characters as you do for your leads, I just don't think your play is going to be very good. And I've felt it as an actor in smaller roles, when the director does not give two poops about what you're doing, bringing it back, that golden poop. I heard a director say to a friend who was in a show, who asked for some direction, that it doesn't matter because you don't have a lot of lines in this scene. It doesn't matter what you do. And I was like,
just wrong. Just wrong.
They said the thing that nobody says. Like, a lot of directors think it and feel it and act like it, but nobody ever comes out and says you don't matter because you don't have a lot of lines. And this person just said it. And so, unacceptable behavior. And if you believe that, then I like I said, I don't think you should be directing.
No, clearly, because if you don't care about every part of it and every person involved, then you shouldn't be in the director's spot.
Right. And it's going to show in the piece. If there are throwaway characters, your audience is going to know it. And there's so much room for so much joy in some of those smaller line count characters that, because this character the girl was playing is so good. Such a good character and so much room for fun. And I was just like, this is big sighs, big oofs and oofies in chat.
Yeah, I don't get it, but
yep, me either. But I guess we don't have to get it. Just some people are what they are.
I think, again, it used to be something I think that would really, really bother me, and I would feel powerless because I couldn't change that situation. But now it sits in my brain as given the opportunity, it is now my goal to make sure that someone I work with never feels like that. Never feels that they aren't important. And it is something that we deal with the dance performances, because as you are younger participants or less experienced dancers, you will probably not be in as many numbers. But, there is a place for everyone in it. And if you go out there and you give it your all, you learn and you improve. And then as you go up through, that was the thing that I've more so now, but trying to hammer into the heads of the younger kids. And they're like, well, I have so many kids in my class, I'll never be the lead. And I was just like, yeah, but if you show up and you work hard, you will get a good part. She will make a part for you because you showed up.
Yeah.
Like, don't just expect that you'll get one because you're a senior, but also don't be so discouraged because there are a bunch of you. Like, there's a place. And I guess I don't know. That's just because I was weird and traditional ballet never really like super excited me. But I was like, no, I was thrilled with the roles that I got to play, even though I was never a major lead. Like, I
Yeah.
get to have so much fun. And you know what?
Right.
People remembered me. Like, they remembered what I brought to those characters. Like, that's enough for me.
Right. And it's, I don't know, it's important. And if you can make kids feel like that, I think that's kind of one of my favorite things and one of my biggest challenges as an educator and as a like youth theater director is making every person feel valued, whether they're an adult or a child. Because you know, the myops of the world who are doing this to have a good time, like she got involved after both my grandparents passed away within a year, and like they were the people that made her feel special, and she didn't have anything when they passed, and she was so lost and so just without anything. And I was like, we're doing Romeo and Juliet, come do a Shakespeare play. And she was like, I know what. And then she did, and she hasn't stopped acting since, and it has given her so much fulfillment. And like, for her to take all those roles that a lot of people would typically like shy away from, and she just owns the heck out of them. The way that she owns these roles, man, there are no words sometimes. She was the porter, the scene we did at Dragon Con. She did that, and it was so funny. It's just so funny.
Wonderful.
And yeah, when you have people that you can like encourage to take on those roles and live them up and own them, then they become lamplighters, for I don't know what word I'm looking for. They like are talking up those types of roles, and the kids see that, and then other adults see that, and you start to have this community and this feeling of like appreciation for all of the roles in the play rather than just the leads.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's the cheerleading part of it. It is the enthusiasm part of it, and it's the respect. And again, I don't want to go and see the play that is just Hamlet by himself, that is just Romeo and Juliet. Like, it sounds really kind of boring, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to watch that. So now, you know, you get more people involved and more people who are excited to do it and to go on stage and say their one line and mean it with their whole heart.
Yep. I also am famous for like just adding people into scenes in Shakespeare. I'm just like, this is an ensemble scene now. Everyone, here's the thing that you have to do to A, make the audience understand what's happening, and B, bring something interesting to this scene, because sometimes the leads are boring and they just talk. And it's like, oh my God, stop talking. When I directed Henry V, I was like, does Henry V ever shut up? He doesn't.
Spoilers, he doesn't.
Spoilers, he does not stop talking ever.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I could just picture you there when someone is like, wait, I didn't know there were other people in the scene. You said it does not specifically say that there are not.
It doesn't say that there aren't.
I raise you. Who else can we put in this scene?
Yeah, no kidding. Ace Tigress, I wouldn't say the chorus gets a bigger role. I would just say maybe more prominent, or I've only added lines like twice in my life. But when I did direct Henry V, I had the chorus was I had two of my like littles, my like 6-year-olds, you know, fighting over a video game, and then the power goes out and they're like, what do we do now? And their mom's like, we're gonna read a book. And they're like, boo, we hate books. And you know, all of this was like done in like a dumb show, because I think one of the things that Shakespeare does really well is like when you can use his dumb show, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, technique, and then kind of like add those in without adding any lines, you've got this whole setup and this whole story. And now you're like, okay, this is why we're here. This is why we're listening to someone narrate every act of the show. And they just sat on stage for the whole thing in the side and like watched the play out. And the kids are getting more and more into it to the point where they like have roles by the end of it. They like run in as like little French child soldiers or whatever. And they have little bit parts in the play as it keeps going, which was a really fun way to me. It was a really fun way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've only added lines like very small number of times. I did take the shipwreck scene from The Tempest and added it into the top of 12th Night because I was like, I want to see this ship go down. Everyone was like, well, okay, which I've been so blessed to have like incredible casts who totally yes and the things that because there are some people who are so precious about their Shakespeare that would be like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Watch me.
I'm sorry, was that a challenge that I just heard?
I can and I will. Thank you very much. Yeah. The only lines I added like that I wrote were to Troilus and Cressida because the ending of that play sucks. I'm sorry, I'll say it. The ending is terrible. So I just changed it. Plus, like we had to cancel the show and like do it online, and it was last spring, so everything was bad and hard, and so I was just like, be gone Shakespeare. We're just giving this a better ending. I don't like yours. Sorry, scholars. This is why I'll never get a PhD. No one's gonna give it to me.
That's okay. I'm just having so much fun with him now.
I can't get over. I've said it 15 times, but I love his eyebrows.
So this is a fun thing, and I was thinking about this as I was working through, and we've discussed it before where, I've talked about how this is different from how I would normally create comics, because normally I would take a little bit of time and I would sketch out the characters. I would get to know them visually, kind of work through some visual development before I jumped into it. But what's fun is as I drew him more across the page, I figured out who he was. So now, and the beautiful thing about working digitally, now I can go back and I can change it from that first panel because he didn't fit there anymore. The way I had drawn him didn't work anymore. So going back and making him fit more for how he gets throughout the thing feels better. And so there's like, I like that part of, I get to know them by drawing them and get to know their personality and stuff. And that's just it's just a fun thing.
I mean, that's a theater thing too. You can't know a character until you can read it. You can know who they are and what they say, but you can't really know them. I mean, I didn't figure out Puck until dress rehearsal. Like there was and I know we had talked about it in our September episode that I was struggling with the physicality of it. But I didn't really get there. And I ended up like through the course of the play, I like pretty much didn't let myself have any straight limbs. Like none of my limbs were fully extended at any time. Like they were always bent in some way. And that was enough for me to finally unlock some of this very physical character that I'm not used to having to unlock. And it was such a journey because, Mike and I talked about this a lot. Like I'm used to being emotional. Like you make me cry. I'll do whatever you want. I will talk with emotions. But I am just going to stand there while I'm doing it. And so now I'm really excited to bring some of that physicality that I learned how to do in this show and bring it to those emotional characters. Because what if, hear me out, Swan, what if a character is not just all emotion or all physical? Ooh. What if a character was physical and emotional?
I love it.
Any actor watching this is going to be like, that's the job. Like, that's literally what you have to do. And I'm like, leave me alone. I've gotten by with crying on stage for 20 years. So just let me cry. Now I'm going to cry and standing in a way.
Now it's going to feel like my body is crying too.
Yeah. You're going to see those tears in my face and in my body and in my whole being. My soul is going to be crying on stage for you. And you're going to like it.
Yes. Oh god. Okay, I solved my problem. So I'm happy about that. So I took out one of the interior things where it was just going to be another like walking shot of the procession, and I am doing a cutaway where our MC, our guy who's explaining all of this, the host, is now doing a like picture breakdown of what her stewards are wearing. So
got it.
That's how I refilled that space and changed it up. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that you don't like get to see Cleopatra till the end of it.
Yeah.
Like it's this huge reveal that shows up right at the end.
Yep. And that felt, again, that's the, even though I can't control how fast or how slow someone reads, I can control the final reveal moment. And if I can make you get through just a little bit more and build that because of the panels that I put in front of it, then that gives me just that little bit of anticipation buildup.
And the fact that the whole speech is so descriptive on everything that's happening and is so not descriptive of Cleopatra that it kind of reflects that movement of the speech as well. It's like, here is every single detail about every single part of her boat. She can't even describe her. Indescribable. And then goes back to talking about everything else. Yep. So I feel that in his face in the last panel, that like, oh, like I feel that I couldn't possibly describe what she, like, I can't even find the words. I really feel that in his pose.
I'm so tickled by that pose. Again, I'm happy with all these things that I drew, but the thing that tickles me the most, the one that I keep going back to, is just like, oh my god, like.
And I love that, like, it puts the emphasis. Yes, she is stunning, but it puts the emphasis on Enobarbus, who is the one saying the speech in the play, like talking about someone else having the focus. So it like does a really good job of highlighting that secondary character spotlight.
Yeah, in
a really nice way.
Well, and it's fun too because this has been the interesting thing for any of these speeches that you've brought, where it is a, like, I think of the Titania interaction with her and Oberon in the forest. Like, this is a confrontation between the two of them. So it's very easy to have two characters talk to each other. But with something like this, you're having a character speak on an element that's happening. And that's kind of an interesting thing to set up as a page, because you're like, okay, so how do you have a visual narrator in a comic format? You know, I don't want to just have text blocks sitting over top of images that are happening. How do I incorporate the person who's actually saying this into this scene to make it feel like it's purposeful?
Yeah.
Love this
is a way.
I love these puzzles that you bring me and give me. I love them so much.
I also love it. You know what else I love?
What do you love, Steph?
Oh man.
Hey, you know what? If you want to see more of that, check out In Addition Pod. Also, we're doing a fun new thing. So if you follow us across the internet at In Addition Pod, you'll get to see our show Loves in video form.
Yeah. I think they're really sweet.
I love it. No,
I'm really so excited. Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be nice little, because we're sharing it, but like if the point is sharing it, let's share it more.
Yes.
But yeah.
Also, if you want more videos that are Shakespeare related, hey, follow P2M Pod over on TikTok.
TikTok. What's up? I do TikTok now. I love TikTok so much.
We are not sponsored by TikTok, but if you want to send us money, we won't be sad.
That is, ain't that the truth?
We'll make more Shakespeare if TikTok sends us money.
It's true. It is. We will
Oh, God.
do more of everything you want if you send us money.
It's true.
Swan, where can people find you?
People can find me at a Swan named Emily everywhere. If you want to watch more episodes of Sketching Shakespeare, Doodle Crew, or any of the stuff that I do, follow me on YouTube. I guess it's subscribe to me on YouTube. Or follow me on this channel here to see more of my art.
And she's gonna start a TikTok too.
Yeah, I'm gonna make actual TikToks about my art and not just my cat. Yay!
Art TikTok. Thanks y'all for being here. Thank
you
you
so much.
for watching. Thank you for being great. We love you.
Love
Bye-bye.
you.